Hi Home Inspire, I'm Alex. Welcome to our recently renovated home in Crouch End. Come in, let me show you around. Bought the property in June 2023, but the house hadn't been touched in 50 or 60 years. So we knew we wanted to do a big reno. We eventually got ourselves ready and moved out in September, and that's when the real work started. It took around 6 months then for all the works to be done, to demolition and the full kind of renovations. And we eventually moved back in January, February the following year properly. When we bought the place, we loved the bones of it. It was a beautifully kept house, but it was very old. A family had lived here for 40 odd years, a family of 4, but they hadn't really done much to the structure of the house. So it was very much as is in this room, but all the rooms were very separate. So nothing was knocked through, and it felt disconnected. I didn't know where people were in the house. The toilet, there was only one for the whole house, and it was very, very small. After moving in, I was a bit kind of having second thoughts of what have we done in terms of buying this property, because it didn't feel like a house. Well, I couldn't imagine what it could look like. Once the work started in September, that's when it really started to come into play. Obviously knocking the walls through downstairs, you could start to see how much space we had to play. Here in the living room, it's mainly untouched, mostly decorative. Obviously, we gave the place paint. Still got the original windows in, incredibly. So we just put shutters in. And the biggest difference is obviously we knocked the walls through here to open up the space. Some of the features in this room particularly we wanted to keep, particularly the cornicing, which is beautiful, and the dado rail that all the way around. The builders were going to knock all this through completely, but we insisted in keeping the dado rail going round for consistency, and it kind of brings this room and kind of keeps it in its kind of original state. Obviously we've made some improvements. We've had the fitted cupboards on both sides with the shelves in the coves. The original fireplace is still here. It's needed a bit of TLC. The mantelpiece was kind of wooden and rotten. So what we actually did was get a piece of the granite that we used for the kitchen and had it fitted on top it kind of brings it all together. We also had the floors replaced everywhere. So it was carpeted when we moved in. It was some strange colours, I think greens and reds and all kinds, but we had a herringbone wooden floor throughout with underfloor heating also throughout, just to give a bit more space. These properties are quite narrow, so by having underfloor heating, it just frees up having to need any radiators anywhere in the property. As I said before, the house before felt very compartmentalised, so the rooms are very small, and that was evident here in the kitchen. I love cooking, and this room had no windows except for a tiny little space similar to that one up there. It was a windowless room, all wooden panelled. It felt like you were on a boat. So I knew straight away that we needed to make a drastic change here. Again, we knocked the walls through. There was a big ongoing debate with the architect and my partner as to whether the kitchen should be in the middle or at the back. I was very clear that I thought the middle would work because it would bring the spaces together and you'd have a kind of living space as opposed to having everything at the back. And I'm glad the gamble paid off, because we wasn't sure how it was going to work out, but actually I think it works quite well. Again, with the kitchen, we were not sure what supplier or how we were going to do it. At first, we were kind of looking at bespoke kitchens, and the price tags that we were looking at were quite high. As the project kind of grew and we realised that our funds were limited, we started looking at different options. So magnet, actually this kitchen is, well, certainly the cupboards and the carcasses are magnet, one of their higher end ranges. But we've got the tops from a local supplier called Planet Marble. These are quartz tops, and the back and the splashback and the shelf, which I think makes it look much more expensive than what it actually is. And then lastly, the finishing touches with the handles and the lighting. These are all from Corsten. Again, it gives that kind of more expensive and bespoke finish. Again, the sockets you can see here, they're all Corsten. So we have a consistent kind of theme going throughout the house. And actually all the lights and fittings are Corsten in the house. Certainly the ones you can see anyway. And the final piece of the jigsaw was this boiling kettle. I think the brand is Kettle. I know there are other brands, Cooker, and some of the slightly more higher end. I did my research and this one was still kind of rated in the top 3 and a price point that we could kind of afford. But honestly, it's a game changer. By knocking the walls through here, as I said, we have a space that runs through from the front to the back of the house. Originally, there was a corridor that would run from the hallway around the back. We moved the walls backwards to eat up that space and allow for more space in the kitchen. And what that also allowed us is to have an additional cloakroom toilet at the bottom, which is always useful for guests and people who are here. Now this is my favourite room in the house. It's at the back, it's got lots of light. Whilst there were some doors here at the back, there were small wooden old ones, and there was a window there, a fixed window, but the plan was always to go as big as possible. Our budget wouldn't really allow us to do full length glass. It would involve far too much work, but we actually settled on this style, and actually it works really well in this room, particularly with the roof light above. As you can see, today's not a particularly sunny day, but lots of light comes in here, and it's very much a day room. This space actually existed. There was an extension here, but it was a weird kind of, it just built it and not really given it much thought. It was 4 walls. There was a door here, but it was like a smaller wooden with a few glass panels. There was a kind of fixed bit of glass that had been just stuck onto the outside of this opening. Unfortunately, this whole side had to be destroyed and rebuilt because it was old and rotten. But again, it allowed us to open up that opening as big as possible. The micro cement and concrete underneath to fit the underfloor heating. And by doing this side again, it allowed us to not only raise the ceiling slightly, but also put this big roof light in, which is a feature of this room to bring in all that light. The doors themselves are kind of Crittale style. They were bespoke and ordered from Fabco Sanctuary. And I think they're like the main feature of the downstairs. It's a focal point from wherever you are downstairs. You can see these kind of beautiful doors. Other than that, we had some more Corston lights fitted. These lights are from Soho Home. So it gives a different kind of vibe to the front of the house, which was more traditional. This feels a little bit more modern. It just has a slightly different feel. This feels like a modern, traditional style as opposed to the more kind of Victorian at the front of the house. So here in the garden, the rear facade actually is a good, interesting story here. So the original plan was just to have a new opening on this side to replace the existing. There was an old Victorian arch here, which was beautiful, and I was sad to get rid of it. But then we had a bit of a challenge as to how do we match the brickwork up the top, the brickwork here, and then the new brickwork. It was all going to be a mishmash of different levels and materials, and it was going to look a bit odd. And so myself and the builder, we had to kind of scratch heads and think of how best to look at it. My idea, it just came to me, was to build in essence, a 1 brick extension. So basically you bring the whole facade out by 1 brick, and that way it allows you to have a level facade, and it could be a consistent material. But I think it works really well, because from the back it does actually look like an extension. That with the finish of the Fabco doors and these downlighters, it just really, I think, adds to the finish and the look of this rear part of the garden, as well as the porcelain tiles here. These need a bit of a clean, but it's got that kind of simple but stylish kind of feel to it, and it's just a really nice place to chill out. Back here, funny enough, when we first moved in, there were 2 giant sycamore trees that, gigantic. It completely blocked out the sun. You couldn't see anything behind here, and it really made the garden really gloomy and sticky because the sycamores dropped sap and there was bugs everywhere. And on this platform here actually was a giant wooden shed, in essence, that again ate half of the garden up. So actually one of the first things we did before the building work started was to have the trees cut down. It's never nice cutting down trees, but these weren't particularly nice trees. How I envisaged having this back space was like an outdoor kitchen. I've got a barbecue and a pizza oven and the dining space. So it's a nice kind of place to come and sit down and eat and just really enjoy the garden space. So that's the ground floor. Let's go upstairs and we can carry on. Here in the hallway, actually, originally we had Victorian tiles all the way throughout, and they're beautiful, but the house was on a bit of a slant, so it was a bit wibbly wobbly. We tried to see if we could recover and keep it, but it was just impossible. So in the end, we found a replacement, and we went with this kind of mandarin stone tile, which I think is a nice way of, it keeps a similar theme, but in a more modern way. And we actually use the same tiles, but a different colour upstairs in the bathroom, which you'll see shortly. Okay, so now we're in the family bathroom, but originally this was a weird kind of small office with a desk in the corner. Next door was a smaller traditional bathroom, which we'll cover off shortly, but it all felt very cramped and very small. So we knew straight away that we wanted to open this space up. Everything had to be replaced because we were putting a new extension above. The roof had to come off. Everything in this space is actually brand new. Again, the mandarin stone tiles were fitted. This is a Parker Howley sink, which is one of the first things actually bought before the even building work started. The lighting is Corston. Some of the other fittings I've just sourced independently. But this kind of family bathroom really works. Again, I had a bit of debate with the architect of where things should be. I was really set that I wanted the bath to be in the centre of the window and have that kind of style and look, whereas her opinion was slightly different, but we got there in the end. I think we're happy with the the outcome. In this space is actually where the original toilet and bathroom was. It was tiny. Incredibly, there were 4 people who lived in this house before us. But by shifting the bathroom into that main space, this freed up this space to become a kind of utility room with a boiler and the washing machine. Okay, so here in my son's room, there's not much been done really, mostly decorative. Obviously wanted to keep the dado rail. The biggest change, I guess, in here was the new radiators. There was an old radiator in that corner, and in here there was a fake kind of wardrobe with a huge water storage tank that we didn't need anymore, so that was ripped out, which has left the room being spacious, and it's a lovely room. Here in the main bedroom, again, mostly decorative. We kept the original fireplace, which is beautiful, the dado rail and cornicing around the top, but we just gave it a lick of paint. Had some wardrobes fitted using an IKEA hack, or they're the IKEA carcasses, but with nice Corsten handles. New radiators throughout, and of course the shutters that we have throughout the front of the house. Coming up to the top floor, to the loft, there was actually a loft space here originally. There wasn't a rear extension, so here there was a window, and the original plan was to come up the stairs and go straight through into the back. However, when the builders started working, they realised there was a beam across here which would be impossible to shift. So we had to be a bit more creative, scratch our heads, and we came up with this kind of solution of going up, over and down, which obviously has eaten up some of the room, but it still allows for enough space to have a bedroom or an office. And it's quite a feature, and it's a bit cosy, I guess. At one point we weren't sure whether we were actually going to continue with building this kind of rear extension. Because of the challenges with the space of the beam, it meant the room was a lot smaller than we had planned for, and we were weighing up the cost of doing the work. I think it was 20 or 30 grand extra to get it done versus what we would get in terms of space. But then we also factored in the fact that we'd got rid of one of the rooms downstairs to make a family bathroom. We kind of had to go ahead with it, otherwise we would have kind of devalued the property in terms of the number of rooms, and realistically we would never have done this again in the future. The house was a building site already, we might as well just plough ahead and just get it all done as one. A feature of this space up here is this giant roof light, which was a nice addition. I hadn't factored this into the building works, and I managed to persuade the builders to help me fit it, because the cost I paid for it was for self-install. So you can imagine 6 of us trying to carry this piece of glass through the house and then fit it. It was an experience, and a nerve-wracking one at the time. As I mentioned before, this loft room existed, but not exactly as this. There was 2 windows, and you actually entered the room through this side. There was this weird kind of space here that was just a kind of junction for the loft. We converted it into a nice ensuite, and this room is really kind of, it feels different to the rest of the house. It feels much more modern, and is actually where we moved in originally when the house was being worked on. We lived up here for a few weeks while the rest of the house was being developed. Okay, so the last piece of the kind of puzzle, I guess, has been the front. We only recently had done. Again, the Victorian path that was here was beautiful, but it was kind of skewed. So we had to completely renovate it, replace it, have a new foundation put down. I found this kind of traditional edging online, which I ordered. It's original. And then where there was kind of concrete front garden, we were going to pebble it, and I actually ordered the wrong size pebbles. Like, they were supposed to be smaller, but these are quite big. Apparently it looks like Brighton Beach, but I quite like it. And then just to finish off, we have had the white masonry painted all throughout, just to kind of bring it all to life. And that kind of concludes the tour of the house. So thanks Home Inspire for the visit. This property is actually available for hire for shoots on the link below, but hopefully I'll see you again. Cheers.